Okay. So today we have a new guide, and I want to go over some things. I want to talk about a few things before I start this. Um, there's a lot of notes in this, and there's a lot of concepts that I think people just need to understand. I get that EQOA is not your typical MMO, and quite frankly, EverQuest was like a trendsetter in a lot of ways, and it distinctly operates different than most MMOs. Most MMOs tend to either really overly complicate things unnecessarily to keep players in the dark about what mechanics do, and EverQuest in the same way kind of does that, but it's just like things need to be dug up and explained and like really learned. It needs to be like something that like you spend hours every single day and you notice certain things and you build that information up over time. This game really never had that, where that wealth of information was built up over many years. And then the private server also, again, it's a private server being built by people who are stitching together the best that they can the way it was originally made. So I built this guide under the assumption that if the people building Sandstorm are trying to restore it completely, then they will be using some of the same, so for the most part, some of the same data that I'm looking at and having to read. This guide took 3 days to write, and I am sorry about that. But when I first thought about making this guide, I didn't think it would be this intense. Okay, I didn't think it would be this much information. So that's why I wanted to kind of talk to you guys person to person before we get into this, just to explain this should be accurate. Okay, this should be accurate. Now, obviously, this is not 100% everything there is to know. This is basically just telling you whatever class you are, what you should be focusing on. I need people to keep in mind, I put this big thing here to tell you a bunch of different things. I'll tell you about, class masteries need certain stats in order to unlock. You need, regardless of where your character is, if you want to unlock those class masteries, and regardless of what I say in this guide, if you want to unlock those, you have to hit those benchmarks. So if something says it needs 200 int, then you need 200 int. Simple as that. And I don't really focus on that. This is totally focused around how to get the most benefit out of your class for what it's supposed to do. If you're supposed to do damage, that's what it's geared toward. If you're supposed to be a support type, that's what it's geared toward. If you're a tank, you get the picture. What I did here is offer you my best total guess, depending on between the server and the old way, of where everything's at. And I still don't think all classes are 100%. I mean, they're very far along. Obviously, you won't have any big issues until, I guess, nearly level 60. But I did what I could. And just make sure you read this stuff up here. I'll have the guide down below, and we'll get into this. So in the beginning, here we have healers. Your main healing stat is always going to be charisma. And I have the percentages for the spells and what they do. And obviously, this is not all the spells. This is just saying, hey, this is kind of, it just basically gives you a rough idea of like, okay, so this stat is linked to that, and that's why it's important. Now, depending on when you want to unlock something, what stat you would need to do, you might put a little bit more effort into that, but this is in general how it is. Now, I didn't include, what I did not include is when a spell benefits you none, I didn't include it. Again, this does not include when it is just used to unlock a class mastery. Okay, but the gear that you get will also have stats. And also there's stat caps. So 350, I believe, is the stat cap. And then you can go above that through things that let you go above that. So those are like masteries and different class stuff. Anyway, my point is, when you're reading this list, though, from here, you would say this is the most important, and then you go down, right? And when you get down here, assume the things that are closer to the bottom of the list pretty much are almost not that important. But again, you'll get a lot of different stats to whatever armor you get. So wisdom here is your anti-undead, HP pool. Agility is obviously mitigation, mostly like physical mitigation. And with clerics, this is something that a lot of people might not know, is your dexterity is used to modify your strike, holy shock, smite, justice, avenge, all that. And then obviously strength is like not that important. I also have class notes for anything specific that I think about while I was writing these. So you might take a look at that. Druid, it's your dex. And dex is going to be like lightning call, combust. It's going to be like one of your direct damage stuff. Then you got your, obviously, your healing. And all of these classes are going to fall into the same kind of stuff, where certain things do and certain things don't. So, stamina is almost always just health. And agility is almost always just mitigation. So really, you could look at this and say that these three is what you should focus on. I get, like, everyone's going to get stamina, right? It's almost like, should I just leave it off the list? But I felt like for new players who don't really grasp certain concepts, like super quick, maybe this would be important to include. So just keep that in mind when you're going through these. Shaman's going to be about the same as the other healers. Their wisdom is going to be a scaler for their debuffs and modifiers, sometimes buffs. Then you got your healing. Anytime you see a number that I didn't put a percentage behind, just put a percentage behind it in your head. And I'll try to go through and update those. If anyone has any opinions on these, I would also not have any issues talking about that in the comments. If you think that anything's out of line or you notice anything, this was a lot of work. If I miss something, I'm human, right? We'll just work on it together. I'll put you in the updates and I'll comment that, hey, user, blah, 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 help me learn something about this. But this should be pretty accurate. I mean, this is, I would say, 90% compared to the server, which is also like 80% finished. So pretty much same standard as the healers. Now here's one that here's one that's gonna like kind of throw people a little bit. So with Wizard, your dex is like your spells. Okay, like most of your good spells and your damage spells. And we've completely left out charisma and strength because you just simply do not need it. So your main damage, and it scales pretty hard, is going to be this dex. Int is going to be obviously your co-primary. Keep in mind, a lot of the times I'm keeping the primaries at the top because in EverQuest Online Adventures, that's what you would do in order to get in order to get more mana, right? In order to unlock your masteries, you'll have to put stuff into these, right? So a lot of the times the first two stats, not always, a lot of the times the first two stats are actually going to be your power or mana stat as well. And with these, with Wizard, I would even say again, these top three stats, that's what you're worried about. Agility is nice. You'll get agility buffs from like certain people. You get wisdom buffs from certain people, and you'll get probably like wisdom from gear and stuff like that, and that'll help your numbers more than putting your training points into it. Think of like really important stats will be the first three that you put your training points into, and again, make sure you look at these class notes. Magician, again, your mage casting stuff, your main damage is going to be at the top with this dex. Your int is going to drive your primary pool. So, like, if you can't cast spells, you're useless, right? So you want to put stuff into your pool. Now, see this is one of the primary stats for mage, but why is it lower? Because mage primary damage, and that's your role, and your tank is your pet a lot of the times. You want to invest in dex. Yeah, it's not one of your primary two things that give you mana, but it is your main damage, and they scale very good. So just keep that in mind, that not always do those two stats really determine what you should be doing on your class. If you're only putting points into those and you're not getting gear to cover your others, then it could be problematic, right? But you get a lot more points as you scale up in level. And then obviously stamina and wisdom. Like wisdom, a lot of the times it's like almost never good to put points into wisdom. And the only reason for that is the way that the math works. If I said that you had like 350, you were capped out on wisdom, and you divide that by 7, because that's what you do. Every 7 points is 1 resist. You only get 50, okay? Understand that 50 is not that much. 50, if you go over to my stats explained and, put that in, you'll see the formula for how 50 is determined. And straight up, 50 is not a lot. You won't resist much. You don't have a high chance to resist, and you also do not have, when you do resist, you won't resist much. So keep that in mind if your wisdom is low, but also just putting points seems dumb. Seems dumb to put points from training points into that when you have other stats that are so much more important. And a lot of these I talk about stats that you can just skip because they have almost like literally no relevance to the class. They do not benefit a single thing on the class, then I leave them off the list. But that does not mean that they don't unlock something. So just keep in mind when you're playing those and you're looking through those and you're trying to figure that out. Okay. Necromancer. Primary power is your int. Okay. This is just basically your mana pool. And then co-primary stamina. Stamina is pretty important for Necromancer. I know you would think that Dex should be higher on this list, but because Necromancers are able to manipulate their HP, and a lot of the spells in EverQuest, like for Necromancers, they can heal other people with their health bar. In a lot of games nowadays, it's based off of percentages, so no matter how big your health pool is, it does not matter. But just keep in mind, your big health pool can also help you heal your pet. Okay, and you can keep your pet alive and keep it sturdy and keep it tanking, and you can act like a support for your pet, where in a lot of cases, like Enchanter, which Enchanter I believe has a heal for the pet, but Enchanter and Magician just have to burst down whoever it's attacking and hope they don't pull aggro, and they have to do that before they run out of mana or their pet dies. Necromancer has a pocket option where they go, okay, I'm going to heal my pet, I'm going to let it burn these down, and Necromancer pets are arguably some of the strongest in the game if you don't count certain scenarios like charm pets and stuff like that. So just keep in mind that that is a thing, and it's important to think about. And then this is your main damage, right? Now you have charms and like CC moves, stuff that like locks, binds, and stuff like that, and things can be helped with charisma. So keep that in mind when you're trying to basically scale those things. And they also have like charm undead, where you can charm undead things to become your pet. But the scaling, I believe, modifies the time, like the duration. And then we have actual scaling with wisdom, which is different from a lot of classes. A lot of classes don't have scaling with wisdom, even though they could, right? And it would be beneficial and it would make sense with their class. A lot of them just don't. So, Necromancers are very unique in a lot of ways. Alchemists, also pretty cool. They rely on Dex for a lot of their spells, and Wisdom is their secondary, and they get scaling as well. It's very nice because I feel like when you're able to scale up Wisdom, it will, in the end, make you a little bit easier to deal with magic. Even though it's not a lot, the ability to put points into it and make progress with other things. And if this is like a main stat, you'll probably be trying to unlock certain things in the class masteries anyway with Wisdom. I feel like, at the end of the day, you'll get a lot of stuff from gear and your things like that will work out. Now, this one's a little bit weird. Okay. Primary for your power pool. It's down here. Very different class. This class was added with Frontiers and wasn't with the original game, and they had more time to think about stuff. So Alchemist is a very unique class. I don't know if I'd recommend new players to play it, but it's fun to fuck around with for sure. And a lot of people do say it's very strong. Now this was when the game was live though. Okay, so this wasn't recent like in this specific game, but when it was live, Alchemists were seen as very strong, very like pretty good DPS, and they played differently than other classes, which was kind of like a refreshing thing when you look at the way all the classes are built and how they have a lot of similarities. Charisma is important for enchanters, despite not having like really the heals and stuff, because they have charms and lulls and stuff, and it is paramount to how the class plays. You can have some of the best pets in the game because you can literally charm creatures, and you can hold them for a longer time and longer scaling with charisma. And it's a very unique mechanic of the game because it allows you to manipulate the situation in spots where, normally you wouldn't be able to. It's kind of game breaking, especially because we're on a private server essentially. Charming some of these broken stat things that are out in the world. Great. That's great. It's wonderful. It's should be patched, but it's not. So keep that in mind. And then your nukes. Then you have your nukes are going to be your decks. And then this is pretty standard. But they do have a resistance buff that scales with charisma again. So this will help this without putting any points into it. But I'm going to be cleaning up stuff and making changes, so keep that in mind. So maybe you visit one day and I'll have like little tweaks and I'll put the updates up there. Okay, so melee, we're looking at Monk. Monk is one of the only classes in the entire game, okay, that scales stamina with damage. Okay, so that's pretty unique. Okay, very unique. That makes them prominently and uniquely suited for certain things. They're a very melee based class and they do a lot of damage. They can also kind of like off tank and things like that. So you have your dex, but you also want strength. Your kicks have strength modifiers. This class is just, and even on EverQuest, has always been very hard to balance, I think, because the way it works is you're supposed to be striking the shit. It's mind, body, spirit, striking the shit out of these things. And as far as class balance goes, I would say Monk is one of the more unbalanced things. If you can, be quick about it, their kicks and punches and stuff like that, and it's got very hardcore stat focus where you can dump a lot of points into getting damage and getting efficient at dealing damage very quickly. So keep that in mind. Monk is a really fun one for me specifically. I didn't get to play them much on live, but when this came out, I started them, and they're pretty. They feel good. Ranger is also pretty unique if you want something just a little different. They do range stuff, and your primary actually will be, dex is pretty important because of the way that the bows work. Range stuff gets more damage based on dex, more so than strength. It's like strength melee, range dex. Think about it like that. And these rangers, I know that in a lot of games, a lot of MMOs, that a archer or something is not supposed to be melee. That is not what a ranger is. Okay? A ranger, in the textbook nature of it, I want you to think about Lord of the Rings. I want you to think about Aragorn and the kind of character he played. Was he skilled with a bow? Yeah, because he had the elf side. And he was also skilled with a blade. Okay? Think about them like that. Don't think about them as a class that is a primarily ranged, because they can be, but there's multiple paths. You also get a ton of damage scaling with strength. This class is very unique. Very unique. And it's also very self-reliant. Ranger is very self-reliant in the same way if bards had ranged, they would be similar to Ranger. Okay? So think about it like that. Like, they're self-sufficient. They have the forage thing to allow them to find food. That can save you cost. And then they're also able to off-tank. They get agility buffs. And they can break AC on mobs down to where you do more damage. So having a ranger means your melees that are in the group, like if you had a ranger and a shadow knight, they both destroy AC on units, I believe. And so when you have both of them in a melee group, it feels really good. And then again, notes, you'll just have to look at that. Moving on, Rogue. Rogue is weird. Okay. I haven't seen a lot of people playing rogues. And I think there's something you need to understand about rogues. Okay. EQOA is not EverQuest. Okay. It is EverQuest by name, but it is different. And when they set rogues up, they knew that they had a shady past, no pun intended. But their shady past is that on EverQuest, right, they had a bad reputation across all the time progression servers and the P99 server, and in general, rogues were one of the worst class in EverQuest by a mile. And people might already be typing to disagree, but this is what they had to do to fix rogues. They had to go out of their fucking way to make a bunch of updates in later expansions to make rogues not only viable, but that people wanted them on raids. And that that kind of stigma never really went away. And I think this is what I want to say, because if you're thinking about a rogue and you're thinking about WoW, there's a little bit of good news. I believe, personally, after what I know about, because I've taken the time to read and understand what's going on in the game a little bit better, rogues are a little damage machine, okay? But they're also very specifically meticulous to play. I'm not going to get into it in this. I may make like a whole video just kind of breaking that down a bit more. But what I want you to understand is when you have a rogue in a group, they're going to put out damage, and the way that they put out damage is very interesting, because not only are they scaling off of dex, which helps you be more reliable with your damage, they're scaling very, very hard off of strength. And since they do not need to be tanky, okay, they don't need to be tanky. They would like to be tanky. Their dream is to be tanky. They get a lot of help through some of their other stuff that they have, through their masteries and everything, and their spells. But what you need to understand is, if you're stacking dex and strength, these puppies put out a fuckload of damage. And I think that's super important to think about. If you have them in a group, they're going to output that DPS, and they're very reliable, and their cooldowns aren't crazy. And it's sort of like the monk, only the monk has the stamina scaling, which means you put in a tanky stat, but you get out damage. Even tanks pretty much struggle with that. Imagine if a tank could have stamina scaling their damage. That'd be crazy. Now, rogues, I believe they can only go up to... I don't know if rogues can do chain. I'm pretty sure they can only do leather. I'm not totally sure on that, though. I might be wrong. Hey, comments if you want. You help me out there. But just keep in mind that if you're not seeing a lot of rogues, because there won't be, it doesn't always have to do with how the class performs. It also has to do with specific history about rogues and how people tend to steer clear of them when it comes to EverQuest versus other games. Now, obviously, in EverQuest on live, that's a thing of the past. but it does not mean that rogues are not still affected today. Because a lot of people still hold their opinions, and then they didn't play them for years, and then by the time that they were good, they had their other classes, and you already know in EverQuest you have to spend a lot of time with a class. EQOA is a little bit faster, but I'm saying the stigma is still there. So I just wanted to explain why, even though they're very reliable in this game, you won't maybe see a lot of them. And people probably won't play them all the way up because they do have that stigma. And once they're up really high, though, they are little machines. But also, Monk and Ranger are too. So you got to keep that in mind. Bard is, and you know what? You guys can hate me. I don't care. I'm going to say it because I'm someone who is just going to go ahead and talk about the truth here. Bard is one of the single best class in the entire fucking game, and it's always been like that forever. Okay? I get this is EQOA and this is not EverQuest, but there is something about this fucking class that inherently is a middle ground for everything in the entire game. No matter what you do, bards feel good. Bards get some of the best buffs as far as keeping groups stable and playing around people and to get invited to groups. Almost every single person that ever that does a big party should always have a bard in it. Just fucking have them around because they're just useful. Okay, and no matter what you put your stats into, except for wisdom, we'll say except for wisdom and you know, and they can heal, and they can do power over time. You know, healing people's mana as well as healing in general, and their songs last a really fucking long time, and they don't scale as good as a healer would. But it's an insane idea that you could have them in a group and they'll do not always as much damage as someone who's purely DPS, but you're not going to find yourself hating a bard. You're not going to find yourself sitting there playing a bard going, damn, I wish I had this. Like on a warrior, you might be playing a warrior going, man, I just wish I had a self-heal earlier on. That would be nice. You know, and in modern MMOs, you would have that because they pamper people and don't like actual role play. So Bard is just a jack of all trades, and they excel at so many different things, and they're very flexible. And regardless of what anyone's going to comment, I just want to make it very clear the way that their stats are structured, no matter what you put your points into, it's going to feel good, pretty much. You know, obviously this is still a guide, and there's still a recommendation, and I've got some of that down here. But having agility being one of their main core stats really helps a lot because it's like mitigation. And even though your AC doesn't actually show you what you're mitigating, it's not zero. Okay, it's not zero at all. It is about 1/3 of the damage you would take. Agility is in the background helping, and I don't know the formula, and I don't know how it works. I just know agility is one of those kind of sleeper good stats, and with the bard able to focus on it, and you know a lot of their gear is going to come with it. It's really good. Your healing songs are not amazing. It's not like you're just putting healers that is their main job to shame. But if you had a healer in the group, they can take a little nap and your group might be fine. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to stop sucking off Bard. And you might be saying, but Matt, I'm a long-time watcher and I know all your stuff and you don't play a Bard. That's right. Because I want to not be pampered, and I want to have a role play experience, and I want to play stuff that I haven't played before, and I want to learn more about the game and write more guides, you know. But eventually I'll make a bard because it's just nice for having income, getting invited, doing stuff. You feel good. Everybody loves you. I don't know why EverQuest has always been so preferential. I mean, the only big nerf that I've ever that I know that, you know, regular EverQuest made to these guys is that they couldn't pull the entire map and kill it. And that was their nerf, is that they were no longer able to swarm kite an entire map. And swarm kiting is just where you run away from mobs and you're killing them as you run away from them, and they can't touch you. And they get essentially they get Spirit of the Wolf. I don't know if it's under a different name for them, but they get a speed boost. They get everything except for, you know, they can't. I don't know that they can't teleport everywhere, but I'm pretty sure they can't. But it doesn't matter. You can pay for the teleport, and you pay for your taxi, because you're gonna make so much fucking money on your bard, because you don't need to buy healing. You don't need to buy water. You know, you don't need to do these things. You can, and it would speed things up, but overall you won't ever feel like you need to do something. And I said I was done sucking them off, but here I am, right? But I just wanted to put that out there. Bard is a very stable class, and if you're new, you may think it's just playing one just to learn the game. Even if you don't like the class, you're not going to hate them. But, you know, you have all time in the world to play this game. You might not get shut down ever. And so, you know, we just got to rely on them keeping up the server. So, moving on. Sorry for that. Moving on, Warrior. Very easy. You have your main focus is strength. Then we come down here to stamina. And, you know, those are your two main things. So your strength also has, and this is what makes them really decent with strength, is strength helps your melee, but it also helps your spells in this case. I mean, making a warrior very viable with that. The main thing they focus on is stamina and agility, and then dex is to be just a little bit more self-reliant on, you know, consistently keeping threat. But like, these are your main tank stats: is agility to cut down how much you're taking, and then your AC helps with that, and then your stamina makes you know, agility and AC help your effective health. So when you look at a mathematical formula and you say what's effective health, if an enemy hits you for 10 and you have 100 health, then you have 90. Effective health is when you have a formula in there to slow that down. So if someone hits you for 10, but you have an AC of 5, now they do 5. I think all creatures in the game can never do less than 1. So if you pull a bunch of stuff for your friend and you're a high level, you're still going to get hit for 1 minimum. But I'm just trying to say that the agility does help mitigate that even further. So maybe with a decent amount of agility, that 10 would turn into 5 with the AC, but with agility even lower. But it's you know, it's not as big of an impact as AC. AC is going to be top, then agility for reducing melee stuff. You're still going to get hit by spells, and that's when you need like a ranger or somebody to deal with those caster types. And a lot of the times it's going to be healers because they get wisdom to deal with that. So a little bit of class notes here for warriors. Paladins. Honestly, paladins are one of those others that are very middle of the road, like Bard. Very clean, very, very good feeling. I don't know if I'd recommend a paladin for a new player, just because you have more responsibilities in a group, and you do have to like cycle your buffs and keep everyone happy. And paladins just are a very engaged thing. When you look at like pet classes are able to sit there and kind of like watch Netflix and do their job. Okay, I'm not calling anyone out. It's just the truth. You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. But paladins have a lot of responsibility in the group, as far as like pulling, keeping everybody safe, making sure that if the healer fails to do their job, that they're on the emergency heals, that they can heal themselves, pull aggro off people. It's a little bit more involved than the warrior, and the SK is very selfish, so you're not worrying as much about what you're doing for other people as what you're doing for yourself. So same kind of stat focus on here, with the agility, but with warrior, your strength is going to be a little bit higher priority because of the way that they have to keep aggro, whereas paladin, you get a lot more use out of your stamina, because warrior gets a lot more mitigation. Not an insane more, but the highest in the game for sure. And mitigation is just, like I said, that AC, that agility. They get better mitigation. Okay. And paladin gets to use their stamina more as a resource, where they can heal themselves and they can keep control of a fight and they can do stuff. And they, again, just like Bard, no matter what you put your points into, you're going to feel it because they're scaling. I'm going to say this. When I was reading some of this stuff, I thought I had some stuff wrong because paladin scaling is fucking bullshit. They scale not crazy, but like decently, for everything. And they get scaling off of like everything besides strength. Or everything besides stamina, right? And agility, that is what it is. But they even get like wisdom scaling, because they do undead stuff, and it's high. It's fucking high. You take a paladin and a cleric together, duo, to an undead farm location, and they're going to obliterate everything. But I just want to say, like, maybe new players wouldn't like paladin as much because of all that, but still. Now, on Shadow Knight, stamina is still pretty important. You can manipulate your pool the same kind of like as paladin, because you heal yourself through your taps, and which scales off your int here. I mean, this would be pretty important right here. This is a close follow-up, your agility. And then obviously we get down to the bottom and not really great investment. But they are able to use their pool of health very effectively because they're healing themselves and they're doing a bunch of stuff. But they take a little bit more damage, so they're kind of like spiky. They take like a little bit more damage at a time out of nowhere when a spell's used on them, so just keep that in mind. But that's it for this guide. I just wanted to take you guys through this, and I was going to give you thoughts and opinions that aren't necessarily wrote down, because I feel like it helps people, and obviously it helps the channel by watching these. And if you have comments or you have fixes or you have stuff that you want to say, definitely leave it down there, and subscribe. I mean, if you watch the whole thing, just subscribe. We've got tons of these things coming out, these guides. And then also we have how to connect up here. It's going to help you play the game. It's going to get you connected to the game, and how to install everything and get everything running so you can play. And I hope to see you in EQOA. We're really trying to make a big push for that. If you have ideas for future guides, throw them down below. And you can also do this request a guide up here and a donation, which is not a big deal. We'll be monetized soon on the channel, so I'm not really worried about it. But thank you guys for watching. I'll probably see the usuals in the comments, but thank you guys so much. See you in the next one.